They're two Winnipeg parents that most Manitobans know by name, Wilma and Cliff Derksen. Many have followed their tragic story for decades. It was 34 years ago when their 13-year-old daughter Candace went missing. Just a few weeks later, her body was found frozen. Their names and faces became thrust into the spotlight for the next 3 decades, from trials and retrials to their legacy projects. The newest, Candace House, a refuge and a home, a place outside of the courthouse for those families who are having to relive their nightmares, to do it with as much peace as possible, and one that from the moment it opened brought tears to the Derksens' eyes, but this time of happiness.
This is it. This is beautiful. This is really beautiful.
It's a house Wilma and Cliff Derksen have spent decades dreaming about, a place they wish they had when they needed it.
It came from our experience of just being very frustrated as victims and never having a home. And we could see that the offender was being looked after really well, to the point where we would say, we have penal envy. Because they were tracked, they always had a place, they always had people around them, and we didn't know our way through it. There was no set place, no set people for us to settle down and have a house.
Until now, Candace House is a legacy to honor their daughter who was killed in 1985.
This place will be Candace's place. She's got a house. And that's kind of fun to think of. She's grown up. She's become an adult. She's become mature. And I think that's every parent's dreams, for their children to become mature and independent. And so for us to have that even after death is so remarkable.
But more importantly, it's a place of safety and privacy for other families who are dealing with the same murder trial horrors they had.
It's so tiring, so exhausting. And some of the words and conversations are so hard. They just you need to have time away. And there's also the need to center oneself against all the fears that are going on.
The nonprofit charity home is somewhere to go for a nap, to have meetings with police or lawyers, or just to get out of the public eye.
This house is really about being a home away from home for families who have lost a loved one and are having to go through probably what is arguably one of the most traumatic times, having to relive the murder of their loved one while going through the court process. So it offers a place to just get away and relax.
This is really a place totally victim-centered. And you can feel safe here. That's huge, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, which is so needed. And yes, and that we really want it to be a place where people will feel the love.
But it's a place that's taken a long time to get to. It's been a horrific journey the Derksens have spent more than 3 decades living. And it all started 34 years ago. Before there was ever a dream for a home like this, they had to get through the tragedy. Candace Derksen disappeared on November 30th, 1984, on her way home from school. Her abduction shocked the community. Volunteer searchers came out by the hundreds to look for the 13-year-old. After nearly 7 weeks, the search ended on January 17th, 1985, with a grim discovery. The girl's frozen body was found tied up inside a machine shed just 500 meters from her home.
We have found Candace, and unfortunately we've found her not alive. It's a tragedy that she had to die such a violent death, but we know where she is.
Mark Grant was arrested for the murder of Candace in 2007.
Wilma and I have to admit that we had actually given up hope.
2 years later, it was the start of the Derksens' seemingly never-endless time in the courthouse.
It has to do with a new experience. We had no history of anything with the justice system, so this was brand new to us. So we came into this building, which felt very cold and harsh with all the, rock formations and hard floors, and then we didn't know who was enemy. The accused was being led through the hallway right in front of us. And so there were times where he would look at us and then make a little move like this just to, you know, give us a little fright, right, or something. And so it was a really new, weird, and interesting experience.
In 2011, a jury found him guilty of second-degree murder, an overwhelming verdict for Candace's family.
Hi, wow. We knew that when Candace disappeared, that the end of the story wouldn't be good. So we know that there is a life that is being in some ways taken, and we acknowledge that. But we are relieved, tremendously relieved.
But it wasn't over. That conviction was overturned by the Manitoba Court of Appeal in 2013, when a judge ruled relevant evidence was wrongly withheld during the trial. In 2015, the Supreme Court agreed. Grant stood trial for a second time in 2017, and the Derksens were forced to relive their daughter's murder yet again.
The second time around, the trauma was even worse in that I was trying to escape it. Like even the seriousness of it and the enormity of it didn't capture me. At that point, I was starting to escape, and I think that also speaks to how important a place like this is, so that I had no reprieve. I hadn't set up the care for myself the way I had with the first and the preliminary and even the Ottawa. I thought I could do it by myself. I couldn't. Like, Cliff wasn't there, the family wasn't there, and it was just too big. So I think that also speaks to how lonely it can be, and that you need reprieve, you need people. Otherwise, you can't enter into it and learn the things that you want to, and then you come away with a fragmented experience.
It was then Wilma knew more than ever how important a place like Candace House would be, a place they never really had through those years in court.
It had to be outside the courtroom, because nothing in there was safe, it seemed. It was, I think, the moment when we were just really talking and laughing and talking, and all of a sudden I looked up and saw these people sitting and watching us. And then later on I heard that we were laughing too much. And I thought, no, they don't realize that crying and laughing is all the same thing. And we were being judged for our conduct, when we just needed to do what we needed to do.
For Wilma and Cliff, during Candace's murder trials, it was a camper they found solace in, a small but safe space.
It was there. We parked on the legislative grounds, and it didn't take long. We realized that this is our dream. This is like what Candace House could look like. This is our little Candace House here. And we ate our meals there. We took the breaks there because it was just a walk away.
Now, years later, it's a reality. It has pieces of Candace and her memory everywhere you look.
Everything in her legacy and in her memory has that kind of personality around it. So I just feel that Candace would love this. And in a way, I think she will be here to do what she needs to do, not overtly, but just in a very silent, wonderful, loving way to keep this place safe.
And for Wilma, there's one room that is particularly magical, a private washroom. It means victims' families in their most fragile moments won't be lining up for public stalls in the courthouse alongside the accused or their supporters.
People wouldn't think that you need your own washroom. I mean, that's such a place of privacy, right? And then all of a sudden to be in a public place where even the washroom is public, and you never knew who would come in or what would be happening, and there are these invisible lines, and they were never very evident. So we needed our place. And then sitting in the lunchroom, you never knew who was sitting in the next table listening. And so there's no privacy for that. And just a place to cry. You know, sometimes you have all these volcanic emotions, and you're never sure when they're going to erupt. And so and not to have a place to run to.
Even the name is special to the Derksens, Candace House, a quiet nod to make sure the victims have a space.
There's a courthouse, there's the big house, there's the halfway houses, there's all kinds of houses. And we said, we need a house. And that's kind of where the idea came from, over a long period of time where we realized what it was. It was about, I think, 20 years of experience before I said, it's a house that we need.
That we has now grown. It's a family of victims, strangers who share a tragic bond, and a home they can all call their own when they need it most.
Those simple things can just, you don't have to worry, you shouldn't have to worry about them. Where are you gonna park in the morning? Where are you gonna eat? We wanna take care of that.
And in just a few short weeks, it's already paying off. The first family stayed at Candace House in October.
The mother was arms akimbo from back here somewhere, coming towards me saying, I know you, I know you. And she came and gave me a big hug. And I guess the conversation had been around the whole idea that the amazing thing, how something so tragic could bring forth something like this, so beautiful. The whole atmosphere and the feelings, the emotion and the appreciation, just huge. So it was really, it was awesome. I'll never forget it.
Another family is booked for the spring, when they'll sit through a 6-week trial for the man accused of killing their daughter.
I want them to feel safe here and that they can be safe. I think that they need to know that it's accessible, it is secure and it's elegant, and that it's theirs. I think that's important because in crime it's so offender focused that even though it's not said, it's always felt.
Trials that take not just emotional tolls, but financial ones.
The cost to victims to attend is tremendous, and it's something that isn't often thought about. We have one victim that had talked about having spent over 200 days in court. Well, 200 days means 200 days of parking. It means 200 days of, if you have the energy to prepare a meal, and if you don't, then you have to go out. You have to eat somewhere. So it's 200 meals, and it's not just for one person, it's for a whole family. There's so much cost, and that's the tangibles, the intangibles in terms of the mental health.
It's a cost the Derksens know best, and a price they paid for years, until they were able to get to this point.
We knew what we needed, we knew what we wanted, and we created it for ourselves. So if we are in a good space, and if it's because we can kind of leave Candace here, though she's never far. She's always part of our memory. She doesn't really die, never has. But we can just enjoy. Like, we have 3 children who've all left the home now.
And looking at the home they helped create, they know Candace would be proud.
She would say, wonderful. She would say, it's perfect. It's perfect. And she'd be proud of everybody. She'd be proud of us. She'd be proud of all the people that have supported us over the years. She'd be proud of Winnipeg and this country and that she loved. She said, let's have a party. Oh dear.
And they say they know she's here watching.
Candace has left home. She's got her own house now, so she's going to enjoy it.
More than half of the $280,000 in renovations that transformed the commercial space into Candace House has come from private donations. It's also through those donations that Candace House will remain a free space for families who need it. To donate, head to candacehouse.ca.